China's GWM just took the Honda Goldwing formula, added 2 cylinders, added another gear, and built the kind of motorcycle the rest of the industry had already decided was too ridiculous to exist. This is the SOUO S2000, a full-size Chinese luxury touring bike with a 2-liter, horizontally opposed 8-cylinder engine and an 8-speed dual-clutch transmission. Not a concept, not a one-off engine strapped into a show frame. This thing is in production, customers in China are riding it, and the engine sitting between their legs has more cylinders than almost anything else on 2 wheels. And before anyone calls it a V8 motorcycle, stop. That would actually undersell how strange this machine is. A V8 stacks its cylinders in 2 angled banks. The S2000 lays 4 cylinders flat on each side, directly opposing each other. It is a flat 8. A configuration so rare that most people associate it with old racing prototypes and exotic engineering experiments, not a giant touring motorcycle with heated seats, luggage, and a passenger backrest. It is also not a car engine carelessly shoved into a bike. GWM developed this powertrain specifically for the motorcycle. The engine displaces 1,999 cubic centimeters, uses 8 cylinders, 4 valves per cylinder, and 4 overhead camshafts, then sends its power through an 8-speed wet dual-clutch gearbox and shaft drive. The result is 113 kilowatts, about 154 horsepower, at 6,500 revolutions per minute, with 190 newton-meters of torque, arriving at 4,500. Those numbers do not turn the S2000 into a lightweight superbike. That is not the point. This machine is built to move an enormous amount of motorcycle with the calm, effortless force of a luxury car. You do not need to attack the red line every time you pass a truck. You roll the throttle, 8 combustion chambers wake up, the gearbox selects another ratio, and the horizon starts moving toward you. Now look at the motorcycle China clearly studied. The Honda Goldwing is not some outdated joke. It is the gold standard of long-distance motorcycles for a reason. The current American market Goldwing uses a beautifully smooth 1,833 cubic centimeters flat 6. The automatic version has a 7-speed DCT. It has shaft drive, reverse, a double wishbone front suspension, and decades of engineering behind it. Then, GWM arrived and performed the least subtle benchmark exercise in motorcycle history. Honda, 6 cylinders. China, 8. Honda, 7 gears. China, 8. Honda, 1.8 liters. China, 2. It is as though GWM's engineers examined one of the most respected touring motorcycles ever built and decided the correct response was to turn every important number 1 click higher. But the cylinder count is more than something to brag about at a motorcycle meet. On a giant touring bike, smoothness matters. A flat engine places opposing pistons across from each other, allowing much of their movement to balance naturally. The layout also keeps the mass low in the chassis, which becomes extremely important when the motorcycle weighs roughly as much as a small grand piano. The S2000 ST has a listed curb weight of 450 kilograms. The more heavily equipped GL reaches 461 kilograms. That is approximately 992 to 1,016 pounds. This thing does not need a kickstand. It needs planning permission. That weight sounds insane while the motorcycle is parked. Once it starts moving, the low-mounted engine, long wheelbase, and electronically controlled chassis are designed to turn that mass into stability. Published approval figures list a top speed of around 210 kilometers per hour, and at 120 kilometers per hour, the engine is said to be turning only about 2,100 revolutions per minute. It is barely breathing. 8 cylinders are working, but none of them appears to be in a hurry. This is not the frantic scream of a small sports bike engine trying to prove something. It is a mechanical orchestra playing at half volume while moving half a ton of motorcycle down the highway. And when the highway ends and the parking lot begins, reality returns. Nobody wants to paddle a 1,000-pound motorcycle backward using their boots while strangers pretend not to watch. So the S2000 provides powered low-speed assistance and reverse. The transmission handles gear changes automatically. The shaft drive removes chain maintenance. And the motorcycle tries to hide its physical size behind software and engineering. That same philosophy continues at the front. GWM did not give the S2000 a normal telescopic fork. It uses what the company describes as a world-first 3-tier double wishbone front suspension structure. The front wheel's movement is separated from the traditional fork arrangement, helping the suspension deal with bumps and braking forces without allowing the nose to dive as aggressively as a conventional heavyweight motorcycle. Add electronically controlled damping and automatic load adjustment, and the S2000 can adapt when a passenger, 3 luggage cases, and enough clothing for a cross-country trip transform an already heavy machine into a 2-wheeled land yacht. The braking hardware understands the assignment too. Twin 320mm front discs are gripped by radially mounted Brembo calipers. Bosch supplies the braking assistance, while the electronic package includes systems such as traction control, hill assistance, cruise control, blind spot monitoring, rear collision warning, rear cross traffic warning, and emergency assistance, depending on the version. Read that list again, and remember something important. This is GWM's first motorcycle brand. GWM did not enter the market with a polite 300 cubic centimeter commuter and slowly ask riders to take it seriously. It kicked open the front door, carrying a flat 8 flagship with Brembo brakes, car-grade electronics, and radar-assisted safety, and parked it directly beside the Goldwing. Inside the cockpit, the S2000 behaves more like a premium Chinese car than a traditional motorcycle. The touring versions use a 12.3-inch display powered by Qualcomm's automotive-grade Snapdragon 8155 processor. The system supports connected functions, voice operation, and over-the-air updates. There are heated grips, heated seats for both rider and passenger, an electrically adjustable windscreen, electronic damping, and a 360-watt audio system using 4 speakers and 8 individual sound units. That sound system might be the most honest feature on the entire motorcycle. Once you have built an 8-cylinder touring machine, this enormous subtlety has already left the building. You might as well install enough audio power to announce your arrival before the exhaust does. Even the bodywork refuses to behave quietly. GWM says the S2000's design was inspired by the Chinese awakening lion. The headlights become the eyes, the front fairing forms the face. The body rises toward the rear like an animal preparing to leap. Whether you see a lion, a locomotive, or a luxury sofa, traveling at more than 130 miles per hour, there is no possibility of mistaking it for anything small. The dimensions prove it. The Touring S2000 measures 2,660 millimeters from end to end, more than 8.5 feet. It is 950 millimeters wide and 1,540 millimeters tall, yet its seat is positioned only 740 millimeters above the ground. That low seat is not merely a styling decision. On a 1,000-pound motorcycle, getting both feet securely onto the pavement is less of a convenience and more of a survival feature. And GWM did not treat this like a disposable experiment created for one auto show headline. The company says more than 1 billion won was invested in the first SOUO touring motorcycle project. The body uses a 4-layer paint process, with paint mixed by hand to create a consistent finish. GM also says the motorcycle went through more than 7,000 hours of durability testing. Another official account describes 6 years of development, testing at elevations reaching 5,300 meters, temperatures as low as minus 25 degrees Celsius, 720 hours of salt spray exposure, and 500,000 kilometers of road validation. That is an enormous amount of work for a product some people will dismiss as China simply copying a Honda. The original touring family includes the 2-case S2000 ST, the fully dressed 3-case S2000 GL, and the limited Founder Edition. Chinese pricing starts at 218,800 yuan for the ST and 238,800 yuan for the GL. That puts the motorcycle roughly in the low $30,000 conversation before international shipping, taxes, certification, and dealer costs. For comparison, the 2026 Honda Goldwing Automatic DCT currently starts at $26,500 in the United States. The Goldwing Tour Automatic DCT begins at $30,500 before destination charges. So no, China did not simply build a cheap Goldwing. It built a heavier, more complicated, and more outrageous alternative at approximately flagship money. then dared buyers to choose the unknown machine with 2 extra cylinders. And that is where the real fight begins. Honda has 50 years of Goldwing history. It has established dealerships, trained technicians, international parts support, proven resale value, and owners who have crossed entire continents on these machines. SOUO has extraordinary specifications and the manufacturing resources of Great Wall Motor, but it still has to prove long-term reliability, service quality, and parts availability outside China. An 8-cylinder engine is exciting until the nearest technician who understands it is 3 countries away. A gigantic touchscreen is impressive until it fails during a road trip. And being different from the Goldwing matters only when the machine can survive the same brutal mileage that made the Goldwing legendary. GWM knows that problem cannot be solved through cylinder count alone. The S2000 appeared in Las Vegas at CES in both 2025 and 2026, placing the motorcycle directly in front of American riders and journalists. In March 2026, SOUO announced that it had secured European whole vehicle certification, an important regulatory step in the brand's global expansion. But the American situation remains complicated. GWM has described North America as an important part of SOUO's global plans, but an official United States retail launch, complete dealer network, and confirmed American price have not yet been announced. So American riders can stand beside it at a technology show. They can photograph the chrome, they can count the cylinders, they can imagine what a flat 8 sounds like under full load. Then they go home and buy something else because the motorcycle remains forbidden fruit. That may eventually change. But even if the S2000 never becomes common on American highways, the message has already arrived. For years, the easy Western story was that China could manufacture products inexpensively but could not create emotional machines. Chinese manufacturers were expected to compete through price, practicality, and imitation. The S2000 makes absolutely no practical argument for its own existence. Nobody needs 8 cylinders on 2 wheels. Nobody needs 8 gears, a car-grade computer, a 360-watt sound system, and a front suspension that looks like engineering witchcraft. A sensible company would have built a parallel twin, priced it aggressively, and waited several years for permission to become ambitious. GWM skipped the permission. It built the engine first. And that is why the SOUO S2000 matters far more than its horsepower figure. It shows China is no longer entering mature vehicle categories by quietly copying the least expensive product at the bottom. It is walking directly toward the icon at the top, studying the formula and escalating it until the comparison becomes impossible to ignore. The Goldwing remains the proven king. The S2000 has not earned that crown, but Honda now has something it did not have before. An 8-cylinder shadow in its mirror. American manufacturers can keep debating whether riders need another blacked-out appearance package, another subscription feature, or another touchscreen mounted above the fuel tank. China has already answered a much more entertaining question. What happens when a car company with billions to spend, decades of manufacturing experience, and absolutely no respect for restraint decides to build its first luxury motorcycle? You get a 2-liter flat 8. You get 8 gears. You get half a ton of chrome, leather, computers, and controlled mechanical violence. And you get a warning fired through 8 cylinders at once. Honda built the gold standard. China just built the machine loud enough to challenge it.